council are present, all members of our jury and alternates are present, and our witness is back on the witness stand, and this will be you may resume your examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, Doctor, initially exhibit 369, which is on the overhead. This is the picture, I think, of someone McStay's mandible,
Yes,
lower jaw.
correct.
You identified two fractures on this mandible, which would be on the side and also kind of in the front left.
Yes, there's one at the angle of the jaw and one near towards the midline on the left.
Now, when Dr. Gray was testifying, she said this is one of the harder bones, the jaw bone. Would you agree with that?
It's harder than, let's say, a small bone like your hands, but I think it's comparable to some parts of your skull.
So for how many impacts are you determining caused those two fractures?
These two fractures can be caused by one impact. I can't rule out another impact, making the fracture two separate impacts.
And those fractures are all the way through?
Yes,
So for a fracture to happen through the jaw, in the middle, and then also near the hinge more towards the back, that would take significant force, would it not, to cause that kind of fracture from being struck?
yes,
And we're assuming, or would it be safe to assume that those fractures are likely caused by a sledgehammer versus a hand?
yes,
Speculation.
Overruled the answering
yes,
So with multiple fractures in the jaw and being hit in the face with a steel-headed sledgehammer, are you saying that wouldn't bleed?
Based on my experience from blunt force trauma from traffic accidents, the jaw, you can, depending, let's say, if the object landed in this area, the left side of the jaw, it can cause a fracture without an open laceration.
And when you said right here, you're kind of pointing to the area between the two fractures on the jaw, correct?
Yes,
Now, it may not cause a laceration in the skin, because I assume the skin in the jaw area is quite flexible from us moving our mouth all the time, right?
yes,
But would it not cause a bleed inside the mouth?
yes it can.
Would you expect to see of your mouth or blood inside someone McStay's mouth from that impact?
Yes,
So if she was struck and that started bleeding, would you just have a little blood, or would you have excessive blood that would probably either cause her to aspirate on her blood or to come out of her mouth on her own?
I would expect her not to necessarily aspirate, but there would be blood coming out of her mouth.
And are we talking just a little bit, or are we talking a lot?
I can't answer that question.
Would you say at least as more than just a slight dribble of blood?
I would say it's more than a slight dribble of blood.
Now we'll look at 786, and you describe this. I'm going to let you describe what bone that is. I'm not going to try.
So the white cap again is for your orientation of the right and left and where the bone would be. This is, we have both part of the parietal bones, the left side and the right side. The picture is kind of dark, but there is from,
Would you like for me to zoom in?
yes please. Okay, that, zoom back a little bit please. Perfect, thank you. So from number, I believe 10 to number 35, there is a curved fracture here on the left parietal bone.
And based on your analysis, you expected that general area to be the approximate site of maybe 2 impacts?
No, this one is one impact.
Okay. And when an impact of that kind in that area, in that part of the skull of an adult, would you expect to see some type of laceration?
Well, with Summer's case, it's difficult to say which part of the fracture bones that we see here cause lacerations because the bones are in multiple pieces. Now, if the skull, let's say, was intact and all I saw was this fracture here, I would say it is not necessary to have a laceration with that just fracture. However, because the skull are in multiple pieces, what we're seeing is still the intact fracture. We don't see the fracture that's already broken because the skulls are in multiple pieces, and because the skull are in multiple pieces, there's more likely that she did have lacerations on her head, but I would not be able to designate it to which pieces would the laceration be overlying.
And so I'm showing you 366, and those are all the pieces of her skull that you were talking about, that since her skull was in pieces, correct?
Correct.
And so with this type of I don't know what the proper word would be. With this type of destruction, I guess, to the skull, you, as they're saying, you would expect to see laceration.
With this type of trauma resulting in multiple pieces, I would expect lacerations on the skull.
And pretty much her skull was, I guess you could say, shattered.
Yes.
And this again would lead to the same type of excessive bleeding that you described with Joseph McStay.
It would lead to a pooling of blood, such as Joseph McStay.
Show you exhibit 784. You had a chance during the break. I can go over the overhead. Where you marked on this exhibit and this is for Summer McStay. You're able to mark on the exhibit the lacerations, fractures, and impact locations, correct?
Correct.
And you wrote 1 through 6, then a couple times you wrote 4 and 5 twice, just because it was different angles from the same injuries that you saw.
Yes.
And these are, lack of a better term, these are approximate locations. It's not exact.
Correct, because the skull were in pieces.
And could you explain to the jury what drawings you made on this exhibit?
So let's take the one on the right top corner. You have the left side of the head. These are the fractured, broken jaw. Then you have the one on the left outer frontal bone. And you have, there was one piece of bone that I knew was on the left side. It was, because the piece was small, I couldn't tell where exactly on the left side of the head. So that's why there's only a line to say that's one impact here. And then we saw the one that was sitting on the skull cap. That's the number 4. And then on the right side of the head, there were 2 lines, curved-like lines, and those indicate 2 impact sites.
And those curved lines at 1 and 2, those are similar contour to the face of the sledgehammer.
Yes.
So you expect probably 2 impacts, to the right frontal lobe, and then 3 impacts to the top back side left area.
Yes.
And 1 to the left side of the jaw.
Correct.
So 4 strikes to the left side, and then 2 to the front right.
Yes.
Now if we can go back to my computer, we'll talk about Gianni McStay. I'll start with exhibit 355. This is the, I'll tell you what, I'm sorry, Deputy Jackson, I'm going to start with the overhead, but I think this explains a little bit better. I'm going to show you 787. And that is the diagram you completed for Gianni McStay?
Correct.
And could you explain to the jury what you drew on there and what you're seeing in the autopsy?
So the red ink is for the impact, the blue is for the fracture. On some of the areas in the diagram, there's overlapping red and blue because they're both impact because there is a fracture. So we start from the top right corner, you see this is the area where there was a big open hole in the left back of the skull with still a piece of triangular shaped skull attached. And this is one impact site. There was another one, when you looked at from the top of the skull, there was a half a circle fracture on the left parietal bone, which is a second impact. When you looked at the front of the skull, there was a fracture going down towards the forehead. That's an impact and a fracture. Then there was a bigger curvilinear fracture on the top right side of the head that extended to the left side. Now this impact caused a fracture of the sutures, which is the joining or the fusion between the right and left side, and also another radiating fracture going towards the forehead. The next fracture is on the outer right parietal area that moves and connects to the fracture that was already there, the curvilinear fracture. The sixth impact that I saw in the skull was a depressed S-shaped fracture on the right parietal bone.
And you testified on direct that children of Gianni's age, their skin is more elastic and their bones are more flexible or pliable.
Yes.
So for there to be a fracture of the number and the size that you saw, would that lead you to believe that it was a more force necessary to cause those fractures than you would on, say, an adult?
Yes.
So when Gianni McStay was murdered, the blows were of great force,
Significant force, yes.
causing those type of fractures. Would you expect to see lacerations around those impact points?
With these type of fractures, the one that I would suspect, at least a laceration, is impact that I designated number 1.
If we can go to my computer, I have exhibit 354 up. And I think that's the one you're thinking of?
Correct, is the impact that caused the big hole in the left side of the head.
Since that hole was caused, that's where you expect that laceration there.
Yes.
And again, understanding Gianni was a toddler, so you wouldn't have as much blood in his body as his parents, correct?
Correct.
But you would still expect significant bleeding from that impact.
From that laceration, yes.
Now, before you perform an autopsy, is it common for you to meet with the detectives to kind of get some background on whether it be the scene or the remains that are being brought to you?
The detectives are at the autopsy, so that we don't meet before, so that's where we would talk to them. Sometimes we do get additional histories, and sometimes we don't.
In this case, did you talk to the detectives and then I say, hey, here's a sledgehammer we found in the grave?
The sledgehammer was brought to the autopsy. I don't recall who brought it and showed it to me.
Because we all said Dr. Gray was there, correct?
Yes.
And there were different detectives that were there.
Correct.
Was your coroner there as well, one of your coroner investigators?
No.
So they weren't present during the autopsy?
No.
So while you're doing the autopsy, I assume Dr. Gray first tries to work to put the bones in their respective grouping.
Yes.
And I assume that took some time.
Correct.
After that was done, is that when you came in and said, okay, let me see what you have now that you've laid them out?
I was there the entire time of the autopsy, so I was watching her, and during that process.
And so at any point, did any of the detectives tell you about what other items were found inside the grave besides the sledgehammer?
Sorry. The only way that I got information of what was found in the grave that I can recall is from the coroner investigator's report.
Did you learn that the clothes of Summer McStay were not found on her body?
May I look at my report for recollection?
If that'll help, please let us know when you're done.
From the summary of this report, it doesn't indicate that it was not on the body. It just indicates that it was in the gravesite.
So you weren't told they were found up, the pants and panties were found up above her head?
No,
Were you told that it appeared that the bra had been cut in between the two cuts, the left and the right cut?
no,
Were you told that there might have been a sharp object found, or evidence of that a sharp object was used on Summer McStay's clothing?
Objection, hearsay.
Overruled.
I was not told.
When you were doing the autopsy, were you looking for signs of maybe anybody was stabbed?
We were looking for signs of any injuries, whether or not sharp force or blunt force trauma.
And did you see any marks on any of the remains that you observed that are consistent with any stabbing wounds?
No,
And if someone is stabbed, I assume you've done an autopsy before somebody was stabbed.
yes,
Have you ever come across a situation where somebody was stabbed, you had a clear fatal wound from a stab that did not actually leave a mark on the skeletal part of the remains?
yes,
So based on what you see from the autopsy you did, you cannot eliminate or include the use of any kind of sharp knife or object during their demise.
correct.
Now, am I right? I want to make sure I'm clear on this. In the beginning of your testimony on direct before lunch, this is the first case you've ever reviewed for an autopsy where it was skeletized remains who died from blunt force trauma.
Yes,
Is this still your only case?
of skeletal remains of blunt force trauma, yes.
As a pathologist and a medical doctor, based on the injuries you've seen during the autopsy of blunt force trauma to 3 victims you can identify, obviously Joseph Jr., there's insufficient remains for you to make any kind of medical determination, correct?
Yes,
But for the 3 that you see, the location to which Gianni Joseph Sr. and Summer McStay met their demise, at that scene, would you expect to see blood at that scene?
I would expect blood to be at that scene.
If the bodies were killed at some location and transported somewhere else, would you expect those bodies, even after their demise, to continue to leak blood while they're being moved?
No, because once you're dead, your heart will stop pumping blood. So even though you have injured blood vessels, there's no pressure pushing the blood out.
What about gravity? What if I picked up a dead body and the laceration was below some other part of the body? Would the gravity cause it to come out?
If you're already bleeding out from the location of where you died, then you die, your heart stops. The scalp, even though it has a lot of blood vessels, but they're small. So when you're transporting the body, the only small amount will be left. It's different than, let's say, if you had a gunshot wound to the chest and it hits the heart and there's no more blood coming out, but you turn the body upside down, the blood that is collected in the chest that has already bled out will come out of the body. But that's a different size of blood vessels in the scalp and the head.
So it wouldn't come out the head.
Not during transport, it will not continue to flow out.
Well, continue to flow, meaning it wouldn't come out in a heavy flow, but would still there'd be some leakage.
It's possible to be some leakage, yes.
Because it wouldn't seal, right? Because the body doesn't heal itself.
It wouldn't seal, but once the heart stops beating, there's nothing pumping the blood out anymore.
And before I forget, the fracture to the third rib of Joseph McStay, you're saying that is on the outside? I'm going to approach you. Can you point to on my body where that fracture is located? And I will raise my hands and...
It's about right here.
So it's on the edge,
outer.
and not here at the sternum?
Yes.
Yes as in, yes over
That
here?
is correct. It's
So-
on the outer edge.
So if Dr. Gray said it was here, you disagree, you say it's over here?
Based on the picture, because you could see that the clothing, we're taking the picture from the left side, and the bone is sticking out. So it would be about right here, not in the front.
Okay, so it's the side.
Correct.
And that fracture looked like an impact type fracture?
Either the impact is from the side, or again, is the area where if you have impact in the front and the ribs are bent outward because of the way the rib cage is structured, it's pushed on the front, the side of the rib will break. So I can't say for sure if the impact is on the side or it could be coming from the front.
Now, if the remains of Joseph McStay were wrapped up in a blanket and had cords tied around his neck and his torso, kind of on the outside of the blanket to hold him on, is that the kind of fracture that could happen if someone was tying everything too tight, or is that kind of fracture not consistent with that?
It is not consistent with that.
So this is actual trauma.
Yes,
So someone hit him in the ribs or kicked him or something.
yes.
And just so we're clear, if you identify certain exhibits, I won't republish them to the jury, but 780, that was the picture of Joseph McStay, correct?
Yes,
781 was the fracture to the back of his head.
yes,
782 was the decompression fracture.
yes,
And 783 was the line fracture from the hole in the back of his head.
correct.
785 is a part of the skull of Summer McStay.
Yes,
786 is that part of the skull with another part on the back with the ruler.
of someone mistake, correct.
788 is a picture of Johnny McStay with a ruler.
Yes,
And 790 is a picture of Joey Jr.'s remains with the ruler.
correct.
Nothing further.
Okay, you want to leave it right?
I just want to show you what we had marked as exhibits 378 and 382, and these depict some of the cords that were tied around Joseph McStay that you had testified about. From your view of these cords and what you observed that day, do you recall seeing any type of dried blood on these cords?
I don't recall seeing any dried blood on the cord.
As you look at these photographs now, do you think you see anything that resembles dried blood on the cords?
None object as speculative foundation.
Well, the road claims that she hasn't seen
No, I do not.
And just to make sure that we're clear, Doctor, any one of those particular blows to the head or impacts to the head, could those have actually caused death?
Any blows except the one to the left jaw and to the area of the right cheekbone.
And you indicated that when death occurs, the heart stops pumping, right?
Correct.
Blood stops flowing.
Yes.
So if you put 4 bodies that are deceased and we don't have any more blood flow in the back of a pickup truck and you're driving around, are you going to see blood flowing out the tailgate of that truck?
I would not expect to see blood flowing out of the truck.
Now, could any of those impacts also have caused someone to become unconscious but not die?
Yes.
In talking about the jaw fracture that we observed on Summer McStay, based on the work that you have done, would that cause a significant amount of pain?
Yes.
Would that prevent somebody from opening their mouth?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay. And again, you're not able to tell us the order that the fractures occurred in, is that correct?
Correct.
And it's possible all of the fractures did not occur at one time. Would that also be correct?
Correct.
And regardless of where the evidence was found in the grave, does that change your opinion regarding a medical certainty that you don't have any information that can tell you whether or not Summer McStay was raped based on what you observed?
Based on any evidence of the grave, because she is a skeletal remains, I cannot say whether or not she was raped.
And same thing with eliminating any other potential source of injury, because there's no tissue left. Is that correct?
Correct. If there was other injuries, unless it struck a bony structure, you will not see those injuries on the skeletal remain.
Now, although this is the only autopsy that you've done with skeletal remains and blunt force trauma, you have Dr. Gray there assisting you, correct?
Correct.
And so she's able to assist you in terms of putting everything together, and is it an open dialogue between the two of you while you're doing that autopsy?
Yes.
I can have just a moment. Nothing further.
Anything else?
Just one thing that I forgot. In the remains, I noticed in the autopsy, at some points you located the hyoid bone.
Yes, on the two adults.
And they're both intact, correct?
Yes.
What does that tell you?
That there,
Let me explain. Can you explain to the jury what a hyoid bone is and how it becomes important during an autopsy?
a hyoid bone is a bone that sits, for men, for lay people's term, is the Adam's apple. That is the thyroid cartilage. The hyoid bone sits above that. Hyoid bone becomes significant in cases of possible strangulation, where you have a broken hyoid bone, and that means that if there's external trauma on the outside of the neck, then it's consistent with the strangulation.
And since you did not see any trauma to either hyoid bone, it's safe to say there's no indication that either were strangled by what you saw.
Correct.
Nothing.
Anything else?
No, Your Honor.
Are you able to make any estimate as to how long it would take death to occur once the skull fractures were inflicted?
Because I don't know if all the fractures occur at one time, I can't say, but let's say I knew that all those fractures occur in a single event, they would become unconscious right away, and death could occur in less than 60 minutes. But how long, exactly how many minutes, I would not be able to tell.
Okay, so someone could have those kinds of injuries inflicted, be unconscious, but still be alive with the heart pumping for some period of time.
Yes.
Okay. Anything else?
No.
Any objections to Dr. being excused?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Thank you for your attendance, and you are excused. And don't take any of our exhibits with you. And do we have another witness today? Or no.
Yeah, no.
So I guess that means we have to break a little bit early today. I apologize for that. We'll we'll go ahead and take our evening recess a little bit early today. We'll be back at 9:30 tomorrow morning. Again, keep in mind the admonitions previously given to you, not to form or express any opinions about the case, not to discuss the case or allow anyone to discuss the case with you or in your presence. Again, that means not discussing anything about the case, witnesses, testimony, exhibits, parties, or attorneys, and we'll see everyone back tomorrow morning at 9:30.